I'm going to give a brief presentation on the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium, what it is, how it's organised, the issues and opportunities it seeks to address, some of its recent activities and how you can get involved. So I work for NACA, the Network of Aquaculture Centres in Asia Pacific, and if you're not familiar with NACA, it's an intergovernmental organisation with 20 member states that collectively produce about 90% of global aquaculture production. And NACA acts as the host institution for the consortium. The consortium is essentially a platform for collaborative research, international cooperation and sharing of experience. We currently have 47 members from over 30 countries. These include institutions, universities and projects and private industry partners. The consortium is governed by a steering committee of 10 members drawn from Asia, Africa, the Americas, Europe and the Middle East. The current chair is Professor Yong from UMT and co-chair is Professor Sui Li Ying from the Tianjin University of Science and Technology. They're both here today if you'd like to have a chat with them. Additional guidance is provided by an advisory committee chaired by Patrick here and other members representing the FAO, the academic and private sectors. And the consortium is hosted by NACA, which manages the website, conducts awareness raising, education and training activities. So we at NACA are quite excited about the possibilities of the consortium because it touches on a surprisingly broad range of issues, including conservation of Artemia biodiversity, science-based protocols for sustainable harvesting and management of wild resources, integration of Artemia into artisanal salt farms in Asia and Africa, the development of new applications through selective breeding and strain selection, for example, different sizes and nutritional characteristics. Integration with Artemia farming with fish and crustacean aquaculture. I'll talk a bit more about that later. Use of Artemia biomass as a high-value protein source for people. Been a bit of work done on that in Bangladesh and Vietnam already. Study of the climate change impacts, research on Artemia biology, and training and capacity building on all of these things. So the consortium has already begun addressing some of these opportunities, working in partnership with members. Some of the initial activities were a series of workshops and webinars, kind of regional, exploring issues in Artemia management and utilisation around the world. These included a webinar on the status of Artemia cysts and fish and crustacean hatcheries, the SDG-aligned Artemia aquaculture workshop, Patrick has already mentioned. We held a webinar on the management of Artemia resources in Great Salt Lake, Utah, and another one in conjunction with the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Science Institute on the history of Artemia activities in Africa. Last year we held another seminar on Artemia research and production, which was held in Putrajaya, Malaysia. So coming out of all these webinars, we basically started pulling together ideas, and these culminated in a series of recommendations which we took to an Artemia side event, which was organised side by side at FAO COFI meeting in Mexico last year. And briefly, the consortium made 8 recommendations, which I'll just run through quickly. Okay, and these are recommendations to the FAO. Develop science-based protocols to assure sustainable harvesting of wild Artemia resources. Develop science-based protocols to assure sustainable harvesting of wild Artemia sources to meet the needs for aquaculture transformation. We know that Artemia habitats are quite vulnerable and sensitive, and probably very sensitive to the effects of climate change. Quality certification of cyst products, following guidelines to be considered by a future session of COFI SCA. The idea is that hopefully if we can come together with some decent guidelines that everybody supports, and we can take them to FAO and try and have them endorsed in the long term. Develop improved guidelines for biosecure production and use of Artemia in hatcheries. Biosecurity is an increasingly important issue in aquaculture. Everyone wants to reduce disease risk, and we know that there needs to be some improvement on practices in utilisation of Artemia in hatcheries. Assess the contribution and demand of Artemia resources to the development of aquaculture and estimate the irreplaceable limit of Artemia in the developing aquaculture industry. The value of Artemia to global aquaculture production is probably not very well understood by policymakers. The consequences of a supply shortage could be quite severe, and it has got quite expensive at times in the past. So we need to raise awareness of the value and consequence of a shortage. Investigate the impact of climate change on Artemia production in inland lakes and coastal saltworks. Consider the sustainable integration of Artemia production into artisanal saltworks and its potential contribution to improving the livelihoods of rural communities. This is something, it's kind of a high-profile issue for us at NACA because we mainly deal with small-scale producers and people who are producing salt amongst extreme low-income groups. So if we can do something to improve that, it would be wonderful. Promote and investigate the production and use of Artemia biomass as a low food chain, high nutrition food in nursery and broodstock diets as a potential fish meal alternative or partial replacement at least, and its potential as human food. The last recommendation was to look at conserving Artemia biodiversity and to initiate strain selection and selective breeding for new applications of Artemia in aquaculture. So these recommendations are reflected in the report of the COFI subcommittee meeting from last year, and they will form the basis for future research by the consortium. In terms of recent and upcoming developments, and to try and do some work on the conservation side, there was a training course on safeguarding salt lake brine shrimp resources for aquaculture held in Rome last week. The course addressed the issue from hydrological, biological, ecological, aquaculture, wildlife and legislative perspectives. The course is organised by FAO, NACA and the Royal Academy for Overseas Sciences with financial support from the Alliance of International Science Organisations, for which we are grateful. Okay, and we hope to have recordings of the technical presentations of those online fairly soon. So that's it. I would like to invite you to visit the consortium's website for further information about our activities. So to date, we've managed to capture all of the technical presentations from all of the technical meetings as video recordings. They're on YouTube, but you can access them conveniently through the consortium website as well. It also has news stories, a member directory, committee structure and contacts, and a continuously updated list of Artemia literature. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.